Hey guys, and welcome to a special edition of the Pagnotta Take on Sports. Today I'm going to be doing a quick recap of the MLB trade deadline. I know I haven't posted in a while. I've had some work and stuff like that, so we're going to try to continue the college football stuff. But today was the trade deadline, so I thought I would recap a little bit of what happened today and prior to today. Of course, the big news today. Late, just about 2 minutes before the actual end of the deadline, the New York Mets, my favorite team, went out and acquired a big hitter, which is what they had been looking for a pretty decent amount of time. They've been looking for that pretty much all season, with Lucas Duda not really hitting as well as he did last year. And they ended up acquiring Yoenis Cespedes, the outfielder from the Detroit Tigers, who these past couple of deadlines has been traded. He's been all over the place. So, hopefully they're able to go out there and get, to the playoffs with that acquisition. Many people think they are, and they actually did a great job with not having to trade away Zach Wheeler, which many people thought they would end up having to trade away. We had seen they were trying to do that in the Carlos Gomez trade that was on the table that never actually went through, with Wilmer Flores involved with that. We all know what happened with that, with Flores, of course, being on the field and crying and then finding out later that wasn't going to be an actual trade. So overall, I think they did a really good job with that trade. They did get rid of two young pitchers, but one of them was struggling in the minor leagues this year. I believe his name was Luis Cisa, I think was his name. That was the one that was struggling. Can't pronounce his name perfectly. And then they also got rid of another pitcher. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Fulmer. Another good young pitcher. He was actually having a pretty good year in Double-A, but I think the Mets are pretty set at the pitching spot, so I don't think it's the worst trade to get rid of those guys. But really besides that, today there were no, huge trades. There were a couple of minor trades. I know Dan Herron was traded today, but mostly the trades that were big happened beforehand. Of course, Troy Tulowitzki, that was the trade that really got it all going when they traded him to the Toronto Blue Jays. The Rockies traded him to the Blue Jays for Jose Reyes. Troy Hawkins also did go to the Blue Jays in that trade. From looking at that, another decent trade. I think it works out really well for Toronto, who also made another trade that we'll talk about here in a minute. They get Tulowitzki, who's one of the best shortstops in the game right now, no doubt. Looking at his numbers, the only thing that's really a knock on him is his health. But I think they've got that pretty well sorted out there in Toronto, because they've had to deal with Jose Reyes before. So I don't know if I guess they're willing to take the risk on a guy that's that good. Reyes goes back to the Rockies. Not really a great trade for the Rockies, but I think they just really wanted to get Tulowitzki out of town, knowing that they're not really going anywhere. And I don't think Reyes is even going to stay in a uniform. I know they were trying to trade him afterwards. I mean, he won't stay in the uniform past this year. He might not even make it through this year. I think they're going to definitely try to trade him, or maybe even try to cut the contract, which would hurt him pretty badly. But they may just try to do that to get him off the payroll. The other big trade that they made was acquiring David Price from the Tigers. We didn't know if that trade would actually go through. David Price getting traded at all. Many people had rumored that as a trade, but some people said, well, the Tigers are competitive enough to where they may not end up trading David Price, but they actually ended up pulling the trigger. They get rid of him to the Blue Jays for not a whole lot in return. So, both the trades that they went through with, they got rid of two good guys and didn't really receive a whole lot of great stuff in return. So, I don't know what they're thinking is there. They were in the race. I thought they were competitive enough that they could have possibly made a run, maybe not at the AL Central division title, but maybe maybe making it as a wild card, but they've pretty much sold out on that. And they're just banking on Price coming back. But for the Blue Jays, acquiring Tulowitzki, a power-hitting shortstop, and then you get David Price, one of the better starters in the league when he can get run support, they may find a way to get back up into that race for the AL East. I don't know if they will find success out in that race in the AL East, but there's a good chance that they could. The Yankees are a good team, but again, the Yankees aren't superstar-like this year. I mean, their supposed best pitcher over the past couple of years, and CC Sabathia, has been struggling. And there's been times this year where they've really struggled to win games. So, I think that's anyone's division still. So, I think they made a good move by going out and getting him. Then the Houston Astros, another team in the AL that made a huge step forward by going out and getting people at the deadline. They got Scott Kazmir early on to add a solid starting pitcher to the rotation, and a guy that actually has experience, because a lot of their pitchers are young. So they get a guy in Kazmir that's had some experience, that's a good pitcher, and I think can really help that rotation out and make them even tougher to play against. I mean, we all know Dallas Keuchel's having a great year. Why not add another pitcher that can really help you out? And then they go out and get a little bit of hitting when they went and got Carlos Gomez, and this one was not a fake trade. They actually went out and got him, so they did a great job, I think, at the deadline of acquiring some good players. Gomez, again, the reason the Mets backed off that trade was because of a hip issue, but I don't think it's as severe as people think it is, so I think Gomez is going to fit in well there. And I think they could find themselves in the playoff race, kind of as that sneaky team that gets in there. I'm hoping so, because I like to see what the Astros can do. They're a great young team, very talented, but you just you really don't know how they're going to hold up out in that AL West, but this definitely helps them. The other big trade, more of a lot of players involved in the trade, was the trade by the Los Angeles Dodgers. They have picked up a lot of players. None of them are really great. They did acquire Matt Latos. I believe they acquired Michael Morse as well. And there were a couple other players that were of decent significance that were rumored to be in that trade. So they went out and tried to make their pitch to try to get a little bit better, try to get some good experience in there. I think overall, looking at it, that trade, really it was only the Dodgers that benefited from that. Both the other teams that were involved, the Marlins, and I forget the other team that was involved in that trade. They were really just, I think, selling out, trying to get rid of their players because they too big of contracts maybe, or something like that. And the Dodgers are just trying to bring in players to try to make that playoff push this time and actually win it all, instead of being that team that gets in and really just disappoints. So I think they did a good job. But overall, when you look at it, the big winners, of course, from the trade deadline, Kansas City was a huge winner, no doubt. I think they got a lot better. We haven't even talked about their trades. They went out and got maybe the best pitcher that was out there available besides David Price and Johnny Cueto from the Reds. Great job of going and acquiring Cueto. I don't think anyone thought they would actually be able to get him away from the Reds. Them in particular, many thought maybe the Dodgers could get him away, or maybe the Yankees were going after him, but neither one of them got him. No one saw the Royals coming on, and they get him. Now they've got him and his former teammate Edison Volquez from Cincinnati. So you've got two guys that have been together. They were great in that rotation a couple of years ago, and I think they're going to fit in well out there in Kansas City. And then also they got Ben Zobrist, decent power hitter at third base, but just another guy they can add to a great group of players that they have out there. So, overall, when you look at it, I think they did the best job, I think, of acquiring the pieces that they needed, mostly because of where they stand right now. I mean, they're the best team in the AL, so they didn't really need to make a whole lot of moves, but they made the right moves. As I said, the Blue Jays, I thought, did a great job. I thought the Astros did a great job as well. The Mets, I thought, did a sensational job at the trade deadline. Of course, getting Cespedes, but also they earlier had gotten Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson. And Uribe's played pretty well. Johnson hasn't played that much, but I think it's still going to be a solid pickup. So, there's a lot. There were a couple other trades that happened. None of real significance. But from what I've seen, this is one of the more interesting MLB trade deadlines that we've had in a long time. I mean, it was pretty interesting. Sitting there watching these storylines play out, so many players that were on the table that could have possibly been traded. They had that supposed blockbuster deal that could have been going down between San Diego, Boston, and Chicago, the Cubs, and that never actually went through. The Padres were trying to get rid of Craig Kimbrell to one of those teams. I believe the Cubs were the team that was in trying to get him. That never really went down. And that was one of the storylines. The Padres were supposed to be huge sellers at this trade deadline. It never really came to the forefront for them where they could get someone out of there. I don't know if they didn't want to trade Justin Upton. I'm assuming they didn't, because if he would have been on the table, someone would have gone after him. They didn't get rid of Craig Kimbrell. And I don't really see why they were big sellers or trying to be big sellers supposedly at the deadline, because they are only 5 games under 500, which in the National League for the wild card race isn't that far out. Now, it's not anything great. It's not something to sit there and be extremely happy about and say, well, we've got a chance to make the wild card. We're that team that needs to buy. We're right in it. No, I mean, I can understand a little bit why they might be selling, but they were saying they were going to sell everyone. They keep these guys, and now I think they have a chance maybe to make a run in a playoff spot. They would need a sensational finish to the season. But they kept all those guys. They kept James Shields. So, I mean, players like that could have been good trade bait for the rest of the league end up staying there and could end up helping them get to the playoffs. So right now, when I look at it, I'll give my favorites for each of the divisions. We'll start in the AL East. Right now, the Blue Jays made those huge acquisitions that we talked about, but I don't see them sneaking up there and getting in. I think the Yankees are far enough ahead that they'll make it in. The Orioles can always make a run, of course. We've seen them in there the last 2 years, but I think this year the Yankees will get into the playoffs. Again, I don't see them being that team like Buster Olney and Tim Kurkjian are saying might make that run to the series. I don't think it's this year. I think that could be down the road for them, but I think their starting pitching is good enough. I know, they've got guys like Pagnotta, who's been playing really well, and also Tanaka's still there, so you can't really count them out. And of course, A-Rod's been playing some great baseball. Teixeira's knocking them out of the park. So, I think there's definitely a chance that someone could sneak up there. That division was expected to be confusing, and it kind of has, but the Yankees may just pull away in that division. In the AL Central, I think right now it's clear. The Royals got better at the deadline, which people I don't think thought was possible, but they did. They acquired the pieces they needed to get better. So I think there's no doubt they're going to win that division. There's no one, I don't even think, within striking distance. The only team that would have stood a chance was Detroit, and they pretty much took themselves out of that race. So I think it's easily Kansas City that wins that division. And then I think out in the AL West, I think the Angels will find a way to win it, but I think it's going to be the way the Angels have been playing these last couple of years. Even if they do have a great regular season, they don't really do anything when they get to the postseason. I don't think it's going to be a sensational finish to the regular season, but I do think they will win that division. They'll be in the playoffs, and I don't see anything really working out for them there. Then you get to the wild card teams. It's definitely gotten a little confusing. I think the Astros will definitely be in there at least. I would say the Astros are probably the number one wild card team I'd have in there right now, just because everyone else is kind of hanging back. There's no one that's really proven that they're great to get up there. So I think Houston will stay up there just because of how good their start has been. And then I think maybe the final one I think could be a battle between the Orioles, the Rangers, and I also think that the Blue Jays could get in there with what they've done. So they might end up making it into the playoffs. I think, again, the favorite coming out of there would definitely be Kansas City. They were there last year. That experience has paid off, and they've got some good players in there. And besides that, the AL will be, I don't think the AL playoffs will be as interesting as the NL playoffs will be. The NL East, taking bias out of it, I think that the Nationals would win the NL East. Of course, I hope the Mets can get in there and get it done. But I don't, looking at it, the Nationals are a better team. They've had the more consistent batting than the Mets have. I don't see how the Mets are where they're at. I knew our pitching was good, but I didn't think it was that good. That has pretty much won us most of our games to this point. Hoping that Cespedes coming in can help us. Uribe can keep playing the way he's played. And you never know. But right now, I'd have to take the Nationals with a guy like Scherzer, who's been pitching so well. And you look at the team with Harper, who leads the NL in home runs. He's in the race for a triple crown. So I think they'll end up winning the division. You go from there to the NL Central. This is an interesting race. I think St. Louis will end up winning it, no doubt. I know the race is really close, but I think St. Louis is really that good. They're that team that, even though they're one of the best, they're always one of the best teams in the major leagues. No one really talks about them a whole lot. But I think they're definitely going to win the Central because they are, I think, right now the best team in Major League Baseball. So they'll have no problems out there. The Pirates will give them a run, but I think the Pirates will end up having to sneak in as a wild card. But it doesn't matter. They might have the second best record in Major League Baseball and be the 4 seed in the NL playoffs. And then when you get out to the West, of course, you got to take the Dodgers. Again, no one's really close out there. Who would have thought the closest race would be the NL East? Most people thought that'd be a runaway, and the rest of them would be relatively close. But the Dodgers are pretty much running away with the NL West, as expected by me, because, I didn't really think that, we know if you watch baseball, San Francisco is not a regular season team. Or even if you just follow baseball, they're not a regular season team. They are built for the postseason. So I don't think they'll end up getting up there and challenging them. So the Dodgers will win the NL West. I think wild card wise, I would, like I said, the Pirates will be in there. I think they're going to be really good, and they're going to be a tough out, even as a wild card. But I think St. Louis ends up having the better record. And then, of course, I think the other wild card is a lot tougher. It could come down. I think the Cubs will still be up there because the Cubs, we've expected that the Cubs would fall off and stop playing the way they've been playing early this year. They've really kept it up there. They didn't really do anything at the deadline. I think if you're a Cubs fan, you would have liked them to see if they could have picked up maybe a little more pitching, just maybe another bat or something, just something else to add to that roster who has been, up and down. But I think they could end up being in there. Of course, the Mets, as I said just a minute ago, the pitching's what's going to hang us in there, and we got to bank on Cespedes really playing well. And then the Dodgers, you never can count the Dodgers out, especially if it involves a wild card spot. The Giants, that's what they do. I may have said the Dodgers, but the Giants, that's what they do. They get in and they find a way to win. It's kind of like the Giants in football. They find ways to win when they get there. So, if they get into the playoffs, you never know. We could end up with them playing the Cardinals in the second round of the playoffs, and that could pretty much be who's going to the World Series. I do think the Cardinals will make the World Series. I think it'll be the Cardinals and the Royals matching up. So, a big matchup there in the Midwest. The state of Missouri would be packed for that. That'd be pretty crazy. So, but I think definitely the trade deadline was interesting. Baseball, they're starting to get back up there. I know it's a sport that people have said is heading in a downward spiral. I wouldn't say that it's in a complete downward spiral. I don't think it's the healthiest sport out of all the sports, clearly. But I think, from my standpoint, I wasn't really interested in baseball coming into this year. I wasn't pumped up for baseball as much, like freaking out. But I think, with the Mets revival and this trade deadline that was just nuts with, blockbuster players being traded, I think it definitely helped the sport, and I think it definitely helped the teams that are involved in this MLB season. So that's all for the Pagnotta Take on Sports, this special edition. the trade deadline wrap-up. Again, guys, I'm going to try to do my Big 12 preview sometime this week. I may end up having to do it by myself, so we'll have to just wait and see on that. And if I do, I'll try to do my best. It's going to be a lot of talking from me, so the show will be a lot shorter. But I'm going to try to get the Big 12 in sometime during this week. And then also, of course, next Saturday we're going to be live we're going to be doing our show from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We're trying to get one of our favorite players, Jeff Schottmer, on the show. We've talked to him. We got to know. We got to find out if he's going to be in practice or in meetings that day, or if he could possibly not be able to by the NCAA. We're going to have to just make sure he's able to do it. And if he is, that's great. We'll have him on the show. And if not, we'll still preview the Tar Heels from Chapel Hill. So anyone who watches this, thank you. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you for the Big 12 preview.